Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne's Sharp World, where today we have another Kubi to take a look at, and this one here is none other than the Kubi Master Chief. Now, before I go any further into this review, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. Now, let's take a look at some overall specs on this knife right here. We have an overall length coming in at 8.11 inches. This is a rather big knife. A blade length coming in at 3.43 inches and a blade thickness at 120 thousandths. Blade width on this guy is a rather wide 1.18 inches with a blade material of AUS 10, which you're coming to see on pretty much all the budget Kubis nowadays. A reverse tanto and a very unique reverse tanto blade shape. I really do dig this blade shape. Big fan of this blade shape. We have a really tall flat grind, a handle length coming in at 4.68 inches, and a handle thickness at 510 thousandths. Handle material on this guy is micarta. That is, a little different micarta. We'll talk about that here in a second. A user or a liner lock locking mechanism with a user of a right or left hand tip up carry, a weight at 4.62 ounces, and a price coming in at $70, which is kind of your typical price nowadays for a Kubi budget knife. Let's take a look at some size comparisons, because this is definitely just in hand. This is a pretty big knife. It's not perfect, and it's a shame because there's a couple things that I really want to see corrected on this, because I think this knife has a lot of potential. But first, let's bring it out and compare it to a couple other popular budget knives. Here we have the Civivi Conspirator, which is not a small knife, and as you can see, slightly longer than the Conspirator, as well as here we have the Kaiser Towser K, which is another pretty big knife. And as you can see, it's again, it's about the exact same length as the Towser K. Pretty much the exact same. So I really think for size comparison purposes, that's pretty much all you need. I mean, everybody knows who at least the Conspirator or the Towser K is, right? I mean, right? Two very good knives in their own right. But now let's take a look at this blade and talk about it. Because it is a really good one, and it looks like it's designed by a Kanu. Apologies for mispronunciation of the name. I feel like I've seen this somewhere else, but I didn't see any credit given to them at the specs I was looking at. So there's that. That was designed by them. But let's take a little more look at the actual geometry of this knife, because this is one of the more impressive, arguably the sliciest Kubi blade out there. And you know what? I would probably even take away the arguable part, because what we have here is a very nice, tall, wide, flat grind, and with a behind the edge reading at 15 thousandths. Now, I didn't go through any cardboard with this guy. I just kind of gave it a paper test. But I tell you what, this is a pretty slicey blade. And you also have a rather slicey tip that has just enough strength up there to where I think this is going to make a really great larger EDC knife for anyone that's looking for a good large EDC blade. Really like the height of the flat grind, and I really like that thin edge. The plunge grind is nothing special. It's actually, yeah, so a plunge grind, you would want to see the thinness go a little farther back, but just due to the design of the blade, you're kind of left with, it's just not really there due to how the blade was designed. So could be a little better, but that just kind of is what it is. Again, we're talking about a $70 budget knife, so you know, it's hard to tell just how much weight you really want to put into the perfect execution of a plunge grind, even though that really does add a lot of life to the number of sharpenings on this. You're going to start to get a smile and some weird stuff going on here after a few sharpenings, depending on whether or not you reprofile the edge or just what you do to it. But I will say, just out of the box, it is good to go. It is a nice slicey edge and just a very attractive blade in general. The jimping up here is pretty good. Typical Kubi jimping has that little bit of tackiness, but it's not super aggressive. overall, it's a pretty solid amount of jimping in a great spot that is definitely going to make for a functional use of jimping. The swedge up there is pretty much just aesthetic, but it does look really good. I want to say one more time how much I like the look of this blade. This is one of the better looking budget blades I've seen in quite a while. I really mean that. I like the width, I like the sliciness, and I like the lines on it. So it's a good looking blade. There is an issue with the flipper tab on this blade that we will get to when we get to the action portion, I think. But first, let's talk about the ergos on this guy and talk about this handle, which are actually pretty good. I'm very, very torn on this micarta because part of me wants to say this micarta feels like it was dropped in a swamp and left and then pulled out and dried up, and this is what you have as the result of it. But then there's also a part of me that really thinks this kind of looks like a nice aged patinaed micarta. I'm really torn on this because I'm usually pretty strict. I can be kind of a nitpicky person about the quality of micarta. And at first I thought this looked like junk, but the more I've handled it, the more I've used it, as it's kind of gotten little oils from my hands on it and whatnot, it has this nice rough patina look to where it really does have good traction, and it still feels good in hand. The handle shape, the handle design, it feels great in hand. It really does. The only part is this flipper tab here, which is, again, has more than just one problem. But the actual line or handle shape in general is very friendly to my hand. I think it'd be friendly to a lot of people's hands. And it's just very good looking. I don't know. It kind of works. I don't want to say it's great micarta, but let's get a little closer. As you can see, there are some frizzies and fuzzies and stuff, things that I usually knock down on micarta, and I don't know why I want to say it. My fingertips are nasty. They got orange on it. But I don't know. You tell me. Do you think this looks okay, or do you think this looks like junk? And I definitely don't, this knife is not junk. Don't get it twisted. But the finish on this micarta, I don't know if they're purposely trying to get a patina, like a pre-patinaed look, or what they're doing. I didn't really want to ask Kubi because I'm worried that they would be like, like they would just favorably say whatever they want to say. So I just want to kind of get my own thoughts, but I'm very torn on it. That's kind of where I'm going to leave it. But I will say, like, as of right now, I'm actually kind of okay with this micarta. I don't think it's the best, but it has this weird patina to it that I just kind of like. I feel like it would be pretty hard to get this patina yourself. So, yeah. And I think the fact that it's black, too, I think the black just gives it a better looking, patina-ish vibe to it. Very, very confusing. I've never been this, like, torn on my thoughts of micarta. And if you watch my channel a lot, you know where I'm coming from. But that aside, the rest of the handle is very solid. Very, very little flex with the length and width. You'll always get a little, but it's a nice solid handle with the standoffs at the back. Blade centering is very good. Pretty much, yeah, it's perfect blade centering. So a lot of quality all around this guy. And when you get into the action, this really does have a smooth, easy action. But there is one rather big problem with it, and it's this flipper tab. While it does work, don't get me wrong, as you can see, I'm easily kicking this blade out. I'm just trying to figure out what made it, whoever designed this, what made it okay to think that you could just put this corner up here. It doesn't feel good. Like, if you push button this, it feels a little more aggressive than I would like it to. If you light switch it from directly over the top, like this, it's pretty aggressive. The only time it feels good is if you kind of come at it from the side. It's not bad, but I don't get it. I really don't get how this flipper tab came to be after, so many flipper knives. So many flipper knives have hit the market. This one I don't get it. Because not only is it rather annoying to flip like this, once you get it deployed and you're holding it in your hand, depending on the hand, now it's not quite as bad for my hand because I don't have really wide fingers. But if you have wider fingers and they're pushing up against the end here, this is going to be a rather aggressive point. And even with my hands being the way they are, if I really wanted to choke up on the handle, it's rather annoying. Like as you can see there, it digs. It digs and it just doesn't feel great. So I'm just very kind of at a loss for words on how this flipper came to be, how they didn't, like, through the prototyping stage, you know, you make a knife, you check it for everything. You're like, oh, the action's good, but oh, that flipper, you know, I don't know how they didn't think to themselves that this flipper wasn't going to be a problem for a lot of people. Because when you're designing a knife for production, you obviously want to keep the majority in mind. You don't, maybe this is just me, but if I was designing a knife, obviously I would want to put all the touches, all the flair and lines on it that I want, but I also would want to make it comfortable and enjoyable for most people. Like, I feel like most people are not going to like this. I'll be honest. I really don't think most people are going to like this because it's not a comfortable flipper. And when there's so many budget flippers out there for $70 or less, it doesn't do any favors for this knife. So I don't know how that happened. And it's a shame because, you know, the handle's good, the blade is fantastic, the action's great. It's typical Kubi. It excels in a lot of areas, but this is definitely a knife that I think would be great if there was a little model, a little rounding, like not a lot, just a little bit of rounding up there on the top of that flipper would really change this to a totally different knife. Because as is, the action's great, the blade's fantastic and slicey, the ergos are good. Still not sure about the micarta, but you know what? At this point, I'm ready to say it's good enough. I'm stuck over the flipper tab. I really wish that flipper tab was different. So overall, at the end of the day, it is a good knife. It is a very slicey knife, and it's a solid offering in the Kubi lineup. But I got an issue with that flipper tab. I just really wish it was a little more rounded. A little rounder, smoother flipper tab could really elevate this to potentially one of my favorite Kubis ever. Like, it really has potential, but I really want to see that flipper tab get addressed. Let me know what you guys think if you've handled the Master Chief. Really like the name, too. I mean, who doesn't like a good Halo, right? I mean, I played Halo when I was younger, but anyway, that's the Kubi Master Chief, guys. Let me know what you think about it. Overall, it's a solid knife, but it needs a little more thought there. Really hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And until the next one, I'm out.